Hello, today I will be presenting the advantages and disadvantages of international projects. In this presentation, I will be making a comparison between the dimensions of an international project and the characteristics. Also, I will be doing a SWOT analysis of international projects to understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. First of all, I will be comparing the pros and cons of global project dimensions. The first dimension is the location, and the advantage of the difference of location is that in an international project, you can take advantage of the resources from the countries involved in the project. The disadvantage is that having a decentralized project may have consequences on the effectiveness and cost of the project. The advantage of the languages is that if people communicate appropriately in a same language, it can facilitate the work and even please international stakeholders. The disadvantage is that language difference may imply bad communication between parties and may cause misunderstandings and future conflicts. Then the disadvantage mainly of a time zone is that it requires better planning to ensure an effective communication work. And if this doesn't happen, there's going to be many conflicts and problems along the project process. The advantage is that if the time difference is very small, then this disadvantage doesn't exist because there is no problem with space. It doesn't matter the distance. With globalization, communication is really easy between parties, but the only problem is time, not space. The advantage of a cultural diversity is that it brings different points of view and advantages to a project. The disadvantage is that if cultures are not respected or are not taken into account, it may lead into inefficient work or even conflicts. The advantage that organizations have in international projects is that they can outsource and they can find also missing assets in other international organizations. But the disadvantage is that cooperation between organizations is always tricky due to the lack of common goals. Now I'm going to present a comparison of the international project characteristics. There are 6 characteristics, and I have labeled them between mainly positive and usually negative. But this doesn't mean that they can be in both sides. The uniqueness of a project, for example, it is good because as an international project is unique, it can be more remunerated, or it has a bigger value and a bigger impact in its society and the world. But the disadvantage of this is that it is very difficult to treat every international project as the same because none of them is the same. So there's always different variables and different things to take into account. So it's always very volatile. This is very related to the risk, which is presented as a usually negative because the risk in an international project is usually higher. The dynamics in an international project is very good because it motivates people to find new solutions and new ways to innovate. So it is a very dynamic process that causes very positive change. And also a very positive thing is diversity, because now it is something that brings a lot into the table, a lot of point of views and a lot into the project. The usually limited would be the limited resources, because in the world we are ending with our resources. So transportation between countries is very expensive and it takes a lot of resources. But this can also be seen as a positive, because if a country doesn't have enough resources, it can take resources from another participating country. So the cooperation between countries is very important. It's very positive. Also, a negative would be the complexity of an international project, because they are more complex and more difficult to achieve. Now I'm going to present the SWOT analysis. So the strengths would be that there is a higher impact and results in an international project. There are more resources, workforce, and budget available, and our outsourcing and international cooperation is easier. The opportunities is the globalization, the bigger projects that are available in the whole world, and the diversity, which used to be seen as something bad, now it is seen as something very good that brings a lot. Then the weaknesses would be the deficient communication between parties, the cultural conflicts, and the language difference. A threat would be some international problems like this pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, the recent wars that have been happening, and any other geopolitical conflicts. As a conclusion, I have included some advantages and disadvantages that we have to take into account that are really important. Some of these advantages would be like the common language that facilitates communication, the same perspective and goals, which allow coordinated collaboration between countries and governmental organizations, and that the issues can be integrated into the planning process of a project. The disadvantages would be the logistic and coordination difficulties. The standardized procedures in different locations can vary, and the potential professional conflicts that may be caused. That will be all. Thank you very much for your attention.